Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia, and today it is time for Friday Reads on August 30th, the penultimate day of August. September is almost here. Shorty September power is in the house, and I am excited. September to me feels like fall. Well, I don't know. What makes fall feel like fall? It's not crisp weather, because that is not coming for at least 2 more months. Just sort of like a mood. Fall is a mood. It should be about, it's not changing leaves and sweaters, because that isn't happening, but I don't know. What the heck? Can you hear that? I think Steven is making a smoothie. I did crack and buy some pumpkin spice granola bars at H-E-B yesterday because they're so good, and they run out. Like, you got to grab them when they're there. And so even though I have made fun of stores putting out the fall stuff early, I did succumb and I bought something. So, but I could, if I just, no, I'm going to open them today. Let's be real. Okay, let's talk about TV and books. So TV, we're watching Dark Winds. And so we're up to season 2 now. We're enjoying the show. And it is a crime show. Is set in the early 70s on a Navajo reservation in the California desert. It's based on novels by Tony Hillerman, and so it's kind of police procedural, but there's also a lot of material about the life there. There's tensions between the tribal law versus like state and federal when they get into different crime cases. There's a lot of cultural material that I really enjoy in the story, and there's even a little bit of kind of a black magic thread. It's not a horror story, but there's certain things that are unexplainable, and they're not presented as, well, maybe it was this or that. It's just like stuff happens. So I like the characters and the actors that are in it, so we're enjoying that. So I think I was in the midst of 2 books last week when I did Friday Reads, and now I have finished them, so I want to talk about those 2 books for a bit, and then what I am currently reading. I read, look at all these tabs. This was such an interesting book. Forbidden Notebook by Alba de Cespedes. I want to say Cespedes, but I don't know if that's just because I live in Texas. When I see the accent, it's probably Cespedes, but I want to say Cespedes. I keep wanting to make it Spanish. I don't know. But anyway, it's Italian, and it was written in 1950. It has been re-released with it's translated by Anne Goldstein and a foreword by Jhumpa Lahiri. I need to go back and read the foreword because I just remembered I didn't go back and read it because I don't like to read forewords until after because of the long and checkered history of spoilers in the forewords. This is the tale of Valeria, who is a woman in her early 40s living in Rome in the after-war period. It's late 40s, close to 1950, and she is married and has 2 children that are college age, and they all live together in a rather cramped apartment. The one that she moved into when she and her husband Michel got married, and they have grown a family, and they're all squished in there. The living room is her daughter Morella's bedroom. There's no private space, and that sense of a claustrophobic people all around and no privacy is a prevailing theme in this book. Valeria has an office job, which she actually enjoys, but I'll get back to that in a minute. But the practicality of that is that the budget is not going to make it on just her husband's salary as an employee at a bank. So one of the tensions of this book is money, of being middle class but kind of tight, not being able to keep up or do everything or take the trips or buy the things that the kids want, having extra. Valeria's family used to be more wealthy, and the succession of wars and troubles in Italy over the 20th century up to this point have resulted in them kind of coming down in their fortunes. Although her mother is a very proud and haughty individual who thinks they are going to get it together and get that villa back any day now. The mother is a real piece of work in this story. So at the beginning of this book, Valeria purchases a notebook, and she purchases it. It's the reason why the notebook is forbidden is because she purchases she buys it illegally. The tobacco store is not supposed to sell anything except tobacco on Sundays because of unfair competition with all the other stores that have to be closed on Sunday. But she talks the proprietor into selling her this notebook. Just on a whim, she suddenly really wants this notebook, and she begins to keep a secret diary. And she doesn't really have to be secretive or hide that she's keeping a diary. There's nothing violent or dangerous going on in her household. She just wants some privacy. She just wants something for herself. She's trying to carve out some little piece of time and space for herself and her own thoughts. So all of the pressure of the secrecy of the journal is completely self-imposed, and she spends a lot of time trying to hide it here and there, and near misses when a family member might find it. But as she begins to write in it more and more, it does kind of get a little more loaded, where you can see why she would not want her family to see what she's written in this journal. As she begins to write, she doesn't really know what she's expecting at first, but as she begins to chronicle, she becomes aware of dissatisfactions in her life, and she begins to examine the fact that she doesn't perceive herself the way everybody else does. And then she begins to wonder if anybody is the way that everyone else perceives them. At one point in the story, she finds old letters, and she realizes that the way that she and her husband wrote to each other, that they were different people then, and then what he remembers from that time is a third thing. And just this whole idea of your identity and knowing each other is a big theme in this book. I'm getting it all out of order, though. As she begins to keep the journal, fissures kind of appear, and her family is just going on with their everyday life, and they're not knowing about this tempest that is kind of building up in Valeria's mind. She's an interesting and challenging character for me as a reader. I could really relate to her desire and her need for some sort of privacy and time for herself, and the constant pressures of work and family, and just to get 5 minutes trying to sneak and stay up late and write in her journal. I haven't personally have that kind of pressure, but I can understand how grinding and tiring it would be to always be at someone else's disposal and feel like you didn't have any time for yourself to even think separate thoughts. She feels like she's become a figure in her life that everybody just views for what she can provide. Her husband doesn't even call her by her name anymore. He calls her Mama, and she notes that started after his mother died. And by the way, she mentions more than once that there's a giant portrait of her mother-in-law hanging in their bedroom, and I just thought, no. She has this job. She goes to work, and she really likes her job. And this is also a point of contention. Her mother thinks that it's a come down in the world for a woman to work outside the home, and her family thinks that she just has sort of a low-level clerical job. They don't understand that she actually has grown and moved up in her work, and she has responsibilities and can juggle a whole day of work before the part of the life that they see, and they don't really respect it, even though they're all profiting off of the money that she brings home. And so she doesn't really feel seen and respected and desired, and all of these things she hasn't really thought about. She hasn't consciously thought about any of these until she starts writing about it in the journal. So all of this stuff is bubbling up that nobody else is aware of because they don't even know she has the journal. So that is just so fascinating. But as a reader, it was very challenging because I can't say that I really like Valeria. Her attitudes toward her children were disturbing to me, and she was so frustrating. So many times where she thinks about this honest response, this bold honesty that she could lay out, and then she doesn't do it. And she doubles down on bitterness and even mean remarks and degrading comments, especially to her daughter. Let me just share a little piece from early in the book. Something else keeps me from confessing that I'm writing. It's the regret that I spend so much time doing it. I often complain that I have too many things to do, that I'm the family servant, the household slave, that I never have a moment to read a book, for example. That's all true, but in a certain sense, that servitude has also become my strength, the halo of my martyrdom. So on those rare occasions when I happen to take a nap for half an hour before Michelle, and the children return for dinner, or when I take a walk gazing in the shop windows on the way home from the office, I never confess it. I'm afraid that if I admitted that I had enjoyed even a short rest or some diversion, I'd lose the reputation I have of dedicating every second of my time to the family. No one would remember the countless hours I spent in the office or in the kitchen or shopping or mending, but only the brief moments that I confessed I'd spent reading a book or taking a walk. Michelle is always urging me to get some rest. And Ricardo says as soon as he's able to earn money, he'll take me on a vacation to Capri or the Riviera. Recognizing my weariness frees him of every responsibility. So they often repeat severely, "You should rest," as if not resting were a whim of mine. But in practice, as soon as they see me sitting and reading a newspaper, they say, "Mama, since you have nothing to do, could you mend the lining of my jacket? Could you iron my pants?" And so on. Okay, I love that line, the halo of my martyrdom. Like, she realizes that they're all in this, they're all playing these roles, and she could break out. She doesn't have to keep her moments of liberty to herself. She could claim them, but she is kind of enjoying this martyrdom role. And this plays out throughout the entire book. She butts heads severely with her daughter, Morella, who is studying to be a lawyer and who is dating an older man with no particular plans of marriage and doesn't want to follow in her mother's footsteps. And her son, Ricardo, she coddles him, she serves him hand and foot, she tries to smooth his path all the time. He's very conservative. He makes a lot of misogynistic remarks. He likes to rile up his sister. He has a very passive, traditional girlfriend. And Valeria doesn't even like the girlfriend because she's so passive and docile. And the whole thing is that it's so contradictory. And I mean, that's what makes the book really interesting and juicy. It's just that contradictory personality. And all the times when she's just about to get on board and just openly come out with some kind of bold statement, and then she doesn't. Ah! And some things happen that I'm not telling you about. It was definitely a domestic drama in one sense, if you just lay out the actual plot points. It was, for some reason, for a book where not a lot of things happen, it was pretty propulsive and kind of fascinating. And it's always interesting when you are really hooked into a character that you don't actually like. So if you read Forbidden Notebook, let me know if you agree with my thoughts, but I found it really interesting. I would read something else by this author, definitely. The other book that I finished this week was Kiss of the Spider Woman by Manuel Puig, an Argentinian author who mainly lived and wrote from Mexico because he was in exile for his political content throughout most of his career. It was published in 1976, and that's when it takes place. It's a buddy read with Michael Clark, and we're kind of in the end stages of wrapping up our thoughts about the ending. So I'm only going to say a couple of things about this that we've already discussed. But I did talk already about how it's a novel. There's kind of an experimental format, but not extremely experimental where it's hard to read. But most of the book is a dialogue between two men in a jail cell in Argentina. One is a gay window dresser named Molina. The other one is he's probably in his mid or late 30s based on some little clues when they're talking about the age of someone else. And the other one is a political activist named Valentin, who is in his mid-20s. And the two of them, quite different, could have spent their time just avoiding each other in opposite corners of the cell, but that is not what happens. And the novel is mainly in dialogue between the two men. Molina helps pass the time at night by telling the plots of old movies that he has loved. Also, we have some interspersed government documents and the invasion of some footnotes that present academic text cobbled together from many sources with a bunch of theories about the origins and reasons for homosexuality. And it's a bunch of BS, but it looks like a nice academic text. This book was a major influence on Justin Torres, who wrote Blackouts. And that was what propelled us to want to read this book. And it has gone on to be a play and different stage adaptations and a musical. And I think I'm just guessing. I've never seen the stage versions. I've seen the old movie, but I'm guessing that the experimental aspects of the extra text materials and stuff kind of get set aside, and they just focus on the relationship and the conversations between Molina and Valentine. And that really is the heart of the novel. As far as it being an inspiration for Blackouts, you can really see it. If you loved Blackouts, as I do recommend that you read. Even if you're not going to read Blackouts, I think this is really a worthwhile read. Kind of a 20th century classic. And it's very timely. That's one thing that we have talked about, is the fact that even though it is from the mid-70s, if it was released as a current book that was just set in the 70s, it would not seem dated, and the experimental aspects would not seem trite or of a certain time. It would still seem really fresh. I do think that if you have read both books, I do think that Justin Torres has done a better job of integrating his additional material. He integrates a lot of material from a book called Sex Deviance into his narrative, which is also mainly a conversation between two men. And I think that the way that he weaves in his documents and photos and different ephemera and everything works better as a whole piece and as part of a narrative than this one, where the effect is more like the conversation is being crowded out and invaded by the other text, and it was hard to decide, do I read this and then that? Do I read this all the way through and then go back and read that? So it was kind of a bit of a barrier. But that's all I'm going to say, because I did it again. I said I wasn't going to talk about it, and then I went ahead and kept talking. But I only talked about things we already talked about. So I don't going to talk about the ending at all. Why would I talk about the ending of a book? That would be a spoiler. Okay, I think I'm done. I'm going to stop. But it was good. It was really good. And it's a book I've been aware of. I guess I've been aware of it since the 80s when I saw the old movie, but I have never read it. And now I have. So that brings us to what I am currently reading. When I posted my September TBR the other day, I got all kinds of great feedback from people who had loved different things that are in my lineup, including the two Booker books that I put at the end that I said, I don't know, I'm going to try to get to these. And then there was all these champions for them. And so I took my friend Michael's advice and moved my friends up to the front before my time runs out on the checkout. And I thought, you know what, looking at my calendar, I actually have a few days left of August to fit this in. Next thing you know, I looked up and I was 100 pages in. And so this is My Friends by Hisham Matar. I think that this will make it through. I mean, I'm only a third of the way in. I'm already going to predict that it makes it through to the short list. And on the topic of exiles, our main character finds himself one in this novel. There's a framework at the beginning of this book where we know that the story is being told by a person named Khalid, who's now 50 years old. And it begins when he is saying goodbye to a friend, an old friend who's getting ready to move away. And then he goes back in his mind, and we go back to when he is 18 years old. And he goes off to college. Khalid is from Benghazi in Libya. He's part of a close-knit family. He has his parents and his sister, and he is inspired to apply to a college program in the UK, and he gets in. He gets a scholarship, and he's part of a small contingent of Libyan students that are allowed to go. And this is in a time, this is during Gaddafi's regime. Everything is monitored, letters, phone calls. Even if you haven't done anything to raise suspicion, everything is tightly monitored. The group of students is aware that some people in the group are there to supervise the other ones and report back any unusual activity. And he's just kind of a nerdy, bookish kid. And his original plan is to study, but then go home and back to his family and live in Benghazi. But early on in his first year of school as an 18-year-old, he and a friend decide to go attend a rally in London, a protest outside of the Libyan embassy after some students in Libya had been incarcerated. And they just kind of they're just 18. They want to go to the big event. They want to see the spectacle. They want to hang back in the crowd and not be seen, and just kind of be a piece of the history, but they don't want to get caught up in anything. They think, oh, we'll just go, we'll see what's going on, then we'll go get something to eat, and we'll go back to school. Well, that's not what happens. I won't go further into it, but going to that protest is a demarcation in Khalid's life. And after that, he cannot return home. Already several important friends in his life have come into the story, and we're beginning to see the roles that they play. The book is really excelling at seamlessly blending some shifting time frames, moving back and forth in time and talking about different things that happen, and also the historical and political information that a reader who is not from this culture or has not studied these things, what we need to know to appreciate the story and Khalid's character, his family dynamics, his father's career, things like that are just provided without, it's not awkward, it's not boring, it's not overly explanatory. It's working really well. And I will have more to say about it next week when I have read the rest of the book. But so far, this was a book that I was really interested in because so many people said they loved it. But then when they said what it was about, I was like, I don't know. I mean, is it good? Is it boring? What's the deal? It is not boring. I am hooked. I am hooked on Khalid's story and his character. I really like this kid. I'm rooting for him. And I will let you know what happens. Well, I'll let you know part of what happens. And then finally, last but not least, I went ahead and started Twelfth Night, which is the September play that I'm going to read. I love this play. It's one of my favorites. And so I'm enjoying rereading it. I'm only a little bit of the way in. Why are there always clowns, though? Though there are enough actual characters in the story that are just regular people who are funny, but then he always has to throw in clowns. Why? I don't like clowns, but I like Twelfth Night. Okay, that's it. That's what I'm reading. What are you reading? What has been good this week? What's going on for the weekend? Let me know in the comments, and I hope you have a great weekend, and I will be back soon. Bye-bye.